So, you want to learn how to be a real life superhero? I'm going to tell you how. But first, I'm going to tell you really why you need to know. There's been a whole lot of activity in the last 6 days in particular, and I can explain why that activity's been happening. There are definite climate changes happening on our planet, no doubt about it. But it isn't all man made. Some of it is cyclical, and part of that cyclical event or participation is because we have a binary star. That binary star is now rearing its ugly head from behind our main star again. And that's documented evidence. That's a real thing. And I'll show you that in just a moment. Um, but in the last 6 days, we've seen a lot of devastation around our planet already. And even prior to that, there's been devastation that's happened in Maui with the fires and different places around the world. Um, and my heart goes out to all of them sincerely. But Libya and Greece and Turkey and southern Italy and Bulgaria have all experienced massive flooding due to this storm that came out of the Mediterranean Sea. And I'm no meteorologist or anything, but to me, on the radar, it certainly looked like a hurricane was forming before it hit land. And that's an extremely rare event that never happens in the Mediterranean Sea. And, Libya is like this desert country that their dams are made from dirt and desert sand because there's no water around. They don't have that risk and that need for concrete dams the way that, say, we would here in the States. So you can't fault the way they built the dam. This is not something that's ordinary for them to experience. And it's created a huge amount of loss of life. I think they're reporting 5,000 reported dead and 10,000 missing. I mean, that's extreme. That's not something we see every day. That's not a normal storm. And there's reasons for that. And there's unfortunately more to come. It's not over. But we also have, um, so let me just back up. The binary star reared its ugly head on September 3rd, to be exact. And within a few days of that, we started seeing things start to happen again, an uptick of them. And the closer that it gets to our planet, the more extreme these upticks will be until its final pass. So there's a lot to understand here. Morocco just had a 6.9 earthquake that was horrendous for their area, absolutely horrendous. Um, the death toll there is huge as well. Kilauea is now erupting for the third time in what, 2 years? So that's a big deal. That's something to pay attention to. Yellowstone has also been acting very strange, and that's something to notice and pay close attention to. Um, I mean, it's time to really start paying attention to this and truly learn how to be that superhero that you absolutely have within you. Um, there's an impending Cali quake, rumor has it. And I don't know if you pay attention to the Schumann resonance or not, but it's been absolutely off the charts for the last 5 days. I even felt extreme dizziness last night from that, and I'm going to tell you a story about that in a moment. There was also some very weird storms that took place in Mesa, Arizona, and surrounding areas about 3 or 4 days ago, and as well about 3 or 4 weeks ago in Indiana and Kentucky and Michigan. there were very strange extreme storms with very energetic, like sky lightning. It looked like heat lightning, but on steroids. It was intense and immense, and some really bizarre storms formed out of it. And I'm not going to project a conspiracy there that this was some type of weather modification, because I don't think that's what this was at all. I think it was much more intense than any kind of weather seeding could be capable of producing, to be honest with you. Um, but I mean, even this summer in Indiana and Kentucky and Michigan, um, and I think even Colorado, come to think of it, there were people experiencing these adorable little flies called fairy flies that are tropical and subtropical type insects. They don't live in those areas I just named, but they were there all summer long. Me and several other people experienced them, witnessed them firsthand. And that's a big deal to pay attention to, the insects being in places that they normally wouldn't be in, or trees migrating quicker than normal, because they do that. There was also a cruise ship a day or two ago that ran ashore, which is a very strange thing for me, because growing up, my father was Coast Guard and a merchant marine and a captain on the riverboats. And so I know from growing up in his household that it was his job as captain of the ship to study the topographical layout of the riverbeds or the ocean floor for where he was going to be navigating, because it was ever changing from water erosion and currents and different things, right? So they knew the riverbed or the ocean floor that they were traveling through like the back of their hand. That's their job. So for this captain to run ashore in an area that he believed shouldn't have any type of upheavaled type of landmass under the water, should have been level enough for him to pass through with his size of ship. Excuse me. That suggests to me that there is underwater land movement happening, just as there's under earth magma chamber movement happening right now that we don't see above the ground. We don't see on the surface as evident, but it's there and it's moving. And yes, landmass can move in water without creating a tsunami. Absolutely, it can. It depends on the speed of the movement that would create the tsunami, right? So if it's something that's changing gradually or smoothly, and it's not a huge, abrupt seconds notice, type of movement, then it could certainly, sneak up on them. Okay. So let me see what else here. Okay, so now I want to share some things with you. So I'm going to share my screen, and this right here. Is photograph from Planet Essence. I thought you make it. Okay, try that again. Here we go. Okay, so this is a photograph, and this is our binary star that is coming out in the south area of our main star, our sun. Okay, this is NASA images. Now, in 3 days' time, it moved from being in this position. Oh, I guess that video is playing. It moved from being in this position to being over here in this position. So it went from the 5 o'clock to the 3 o'clock position within days. And by the time it traversed to this position, these things right here started taking place simultaneously. Okay. So it does affect our planet. It has a gravitational pull that is affecting our planet and will continue to do so in more extreme ways as it gets closer. So then I want to share. Actually, no, before I share that, I have something else to say. So let me move that. Okay. So, too many times when we know about things like this, we just kind of surrender and accept our fate. Maybe we, pack some provisions, learn some first aid, learn some basic survival skill type things, whatever. And we're just like, we're going to hope for the best, hope we're in the best, safest location, whatever, and we just sort of resolve to this is our fate as a planet, this is our fate as a humanity. But that's not the case. It's not the case at all. And I have evidence to prove it. So when you're able to stand still in the moment and actually see what's happening, really be able to view it in real time, then you can actually hold time still. You can manipulate it into something that is beneficial for yourself or for all. You can create a new path. Being able to stand in the middle of it, like you are the eye of the storm that can see in 360 degrees, and you can see beneath you, and you can see above you. You can see it all, right? You can see it all. You can hold it in your mind's eye because you are the eye of the storm. Then you can truly control and create what is truly needed and truly desirable in that moment for your outcomes. Just like in those blind studies that they do in scientific labs, where they've proven over and over again that the observers actually have a hand in changing the outcome of the odds of probability for any given study, except that if you are fully aware of who you are and how to stand in your power, you're not just an observer. You're an active observer. You're an active participant that can actually impact the situation rather than it affecting you or whatever it is that you're observing it to affect. And it doesn't have to be you that it's going to affect personally. It doesn't have to be your circus. If you can choose to get involved, like say, watching a hurricane as it builds in strength and comes closer to any given mass of land. And you can practice that. You can sort of play with, if you will, your abilities and focus on lessening that hurricane, or even focus on it building momentum until it gets closer, and then focusing on lessening it, just to see that you really can change the throttle, just like you're driving a car, right? If you're a really good driver, you know how to throttle the gas, you know how to use the brake, you know how to swerve and dodge and miss things, you know how to slow down just in the right amount of time to get around that curve perfectly and the whole deal, right? You know how to gauge how far to stay behind someone when you're driving close. all of that. If you're a really good driver, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Standing in your power as a creator is no different for your daily life or to effectively help lessen hurricanes or whatever else may be impending harm on populations of people. So if you're focusing and choosing to get involved with these hurricanes or tsunamis or earthquakes or floods or whatever it may be of, natural disasters that would affect great numbers of people and property and etc., to lessen that, to spare it, and work on that, become apprised of where the next big event is expected to take place around the world, and be ready for it so that you can practice diffusing and deflecting, so that then we can come together collectively for this astrological cyclical moment and series of events that are going to be leading up to it and trickling away as it passes. There will still be some events. Then we can collectively alleviate the traumas, the damages, the cataclysmic changes, and the loss of life that results from these type of events. We are the source of the butterfly effect. Whichever way it goes, for good or bad. Not knowing what to protect or that you can, ignoring it or fearing it, all gives the same basic general outcome. When you know how to stand in your power and in your faith, and you can face whatever's coming and see it coming and understand what it is that you can do to affect it differently. That's when you become a real superhero, a real true life superhero. Because if we can understand the cause, and we can also understand that we are the effect, we can fix just about anything, unless you have limits on yourself. Because that's the key. Remove your limits. Where you argue for limits, there are limits. You see, that's why grandpas can miraculously lift tractors to free their grandchild that ended up underneath the tire. That's how mothers can miraculously pick up a deep freezer and move it to save the little child that just fell behind it. Because we didn't allow for any limits in those moments. We were in the heat of the moment, in the passion of it. And where there is a will, there's always a way. We always do miraculous things. I'm sure you've done something at some point in your life that you were like, wow, I don't know how I did that. And you probably even gave that power away to something or someone else instead of owning it yourself, because we're taught not to. We're taught not to. That would be too big of your ego. That would be the devil talking. Well, that's bullcrap. And that's what they want you to believe to keep you from standing in your power as God's child. I promise you, I know I'm right on that. 100%. I've tested it. I've studied it in other people. 100%. I'm right on that. So I want to give you an example. I'm driving along down a highway, SUV in front of me, barely any other traffic on the road. SUV starts coming towards us on the other side of the road. I can tell from the lady driving the SUV in front of me, but she's on her cell phone. I can also see that there are two children in her car that are not in seatbelts or car seats or anything. They're moving all over the back seats of the car. I can see them. And so I'm paying attention to this and I'm watching this. And she's on her cell phone and I can see her in her rearview mirror, her side mirror. I can see her on her cell phone. She's not even paying attention to the children who were small, very small children, both of them under the age of 6 at least, monkeying around in the car, not restrained properly. And, already just observing this, thinking, oh, this doesn't look like it's going to turn out well at all. And then the other SUV is approaching from the other side of the road. And I noticed that the driver of that SUV is also looking at their cell phone, not paying attention. I was paying attention. I was observing both of them because that's what a good driver does. They both merged toward the center line, and their rearview mirrors that I was watching the lady in hit each other. And as those two rearview mirrors on the driver's sides of their SUVs collided, it impacted them to come together. Now, as the nose of the one went into the back end of the other, it hit so hard that her tires, the lady in front of me, her tires flew off of her SUV, the two tires on that side that are in between her and the other SUV. And so instinctively, I wanted to just stop and pull over to the side of the road. But because I was observing this, I saw those tires come unhooked from the vehicle. And so I knew immediately, just like if I had remote viewed it, that if I pull over and I stop right here, those tires are going to hit me right in my windshield. And that would be bad for me and my kids in my car. So I chose not to continue pulling over and stopping. And I gunned it. And I stayed up as close to the back of her as I could. And every time she swerved, I swerved. And every time she was being brought back to the other SUV, I came back in as well. And I was following that motion of that momentum of that wreck and staying as close behind her as possible, but over further than her, of course. I wasn't like directly behind her. I was over to the right hand side of the road more. But I watched both of those tires pop over my car and roll over my hood and back off of the car and go exactly where I would have been on the side of the road. I watched more metal flying in the air as if it was all going in slow motion because I effectively was slowing the whole thing down. By the time it was all said and done, the SUV that was in front of me was literally driving on two wheels. It had reared up off of the highway to come unhooked from the other one because it was literally dragging the other one backwards. I mean, it was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. Well, essentially, I guess they were like sliding sideways instead of being dragged backwards, but they were like hooked together, locked together. Their metals had merged. And as this vehicle that no longer has two tires on the left side comes up on the right hand side, on the only two tires it has left, she's about to flip. As they come unhooked, she's about to flip. And I focused on her and brought her back safely down to the ground. And she skid and fishtailed for about a quarter of a mile more before coming to a complete stop on the side of the road. And I was right there and came to a complete stop right behind her. The other car got left behind in the road where it came unhooked. It slid sideways a little further and just stopped across the whole highway. And so, I immediately got out and ran right up to her, and she's like, "Where did you come from?" She didn't even know I was ever behind her to begin with. She was completely oblivious that I'd ever been behind her on the road at all, let alone how in the world was I right up next to her to jump at as soon as she gets stopped. Now, thankfully, the children and her were all okay. No one was injured. The gentleman in the other car was not injured either. But I was aware of this and focusing. And so I essentially slowed time down and put that under control to where not only myself and my children weren't in danger, but these people weren't either. I affected change, and we all can. We've all done this at some time where we have effectively slowed down time. And that's exactly what we can do with this incoming solar event that's impending. Last night, I got extremely dizzy. Like I could not move my head at all without being incredibly dizzy. And it wasn't like spinning type dizzy, it was weird wobbling dizzy that I'd never experienced before. And I immediately knew this is not like something within me, in my person. This is something going on with the planet. So I sat down to meditate. I ended up laying flat on my back to feel like my compass in my brain was leveling out. I was inside the earth in the core. I was outside the planet in the shields, and I was looking beyond the planet itself all simultaneously. Because we can do that. We can be in more than one place at a time. Quantum physics teaches you that. If you know anything about quantum physics, you know that non-locality, locality stuff, it's irrelevant. You can be as many of you as you need to be in any given moment. And that's exactly what I did was expanded myself to all those different locations at once and started trying to calibrate and feel for north and south and find where they were at, which I never did find, which was very weird to me because it was almost like it wasn't like they moved. It was almost like they had flatlined temporarily. And with the shaman being off the charts the way that it was yesterday, it wouldn't surprise me a bit if that's exactly what happened. Now, again, I'm no specialist in anything, so I don't know that for sure. I'm just telling you that was my opinion on it. That was my feels for it. Being a light worker and doing what I do, that's what it felt like to me. It felt void, like it was non-existent, like it wasn't there to find. Okay, is how it felt to me. Now, I affected change. I effectively changed time in the moments that I was actually doing this. And how do I know that? Well, because it literally felt like it was only about 10 minutes that I was doing that. But in reality, it was 45 minutes. 45 minutes I was in and doing and working. But it literally, and I do this all the time, right? So I can gauge that time pretty well, even in the quantum field or astral realm or however you want to say it. And it felt like 10 minutes to me, but it was 45. It was 45 minutes. That in itself was huge for me to realize because that's a step beyond even what I'm used to, right? That I affected time in that type of space in the quantum field. So that was very interesting to me, and that's a lesson for all to be able to learn in me experiencing that. Because literally anything that I'm experiencing and learning is to benefit for you, not just me. Okay. Let me check my notes. Oh, right. Okay. So we can change time's speed. And so when you see our binary star or its entourage with your own eyes, with your naked eyes, when you can see it, that is when it can literally affect this planet in the blink of an eye. Or option B, which is the preferred option, we can be aware of it, watching it, remote viewing it, and anticipating its approach in preparation for our redirecting its course and its extremity of gravitational pull upon our planet. Much like the church is watching for it with their near infrared telescope that's in Arizona that's called Lucifer. We too can remote view and watch for the harbinger of cataclysm that has been in a multitude of my visions of one possible outcome for our planet. So, for those of you who are not familiar with this telescope, allow me to enlighten you. I think it's this one. It might be the Popular Science article. We'll check. Okay. So this is actually one of three, and they've renamed it Lucci, by the way, because of all the public flack they got for naming it Lucifer to begin with. So it's actually a collaboration between astronomical institutes in Germany, Italy, and the US, all controlled and owned by the Catholic Church. This telescope is located on Mount Graham near Tucson, Arizona, at an altitude of 3,200 meters, I reckon. And it's a binocular telescope that consists of two 8.4-meter mirrors on a common mount. Now, these look for things in the near infrared, and they're watching from three locations so that they make sure to see our impending binary star as it approaches close. That would be the only reason for them to have an infrared telescope, because our binary star does not have its own outward light the way that the main star does. Its light is internal, its energy is internal, but it has a very heavy mass. And it has a very strong magnetic pull as well. Now, this Lucifer telescope is something that they spent a lot of money to create. And they wouldn't have done that, in my opinion, if they didn't feel like it was something worthy of spending that much money on. So much like they have their instruments to watch for it coming, you too can learn to remote view through your own instrument that's God given to watch for it coming so that you can be ready, like warriors for battle, like God's soldiers, armed with knowledge of who you really are and believing in it and yourself. That's where you need me. Because if you knew how to love yourself and trust your gifts and fly solo, you would already be doing so. But unfortunately, in this particular era, we've not yet been taught how to do those things. And I hope to change the world as we know it in those ways, so that all people are born with this knowledge that is natural law to have. Together, we can remote view this object and its entourage that's incoming, and not, oh, and I'm not charging thousands of dollars to teach you how to remote view and learn the ley lines of the planet and hold its shields together and all of these great things that I'm going to teach you. I'm not charging thousands of dollars for it. I'm charging peanuts. And yeah, it's necessary for me to charge you just to make sure that you really want to learn this, because everyone that I've given this away to for free hasn't utilized it, unfortunately. They've not used it to further themselves or the benefit of the planet. So giving it away for free is not the answer. And I learned the hard way. And I think I said this in the earlier short video that I did. I learned the hard way that unless someone is willing to invest their money, they're not truly willing to invest their time. And then there are also those who will invest their money, but then still not invest their time. Maybe they just have too much money to throw around. I don't know. But bottom line, you need to have that willingness in you. And I really don't charge very much because I'm not trying to get rich off of this. I'm not trying to build an empire. I'm trying to create a legacy of who we are, just free for all to know and free for all to use in the proper ways, in the genuine ways. And we can only do that from birth if we're also taught from birth who we are and how to truly love ourselves in an honorable, respectful, healthy way. But we will get to that point someday. You've abandoned your path and your true calling until now. You've ignored it. You've abandoned yourself long enough. It's time to come home. It's time to come home to self and learn who you truly are. Take my hand and walk with me and learn how to use what God gave you from the day you were born. Your true self is not like an abandoned building. It's just been camouflaged by layers of societal norms. The real you is there behind all of that overgrowth. You've taken the idea that you are powerful and loved for granted, that you could ever have it. You've accepted your fate. You've settled. You've settled for the 9 to 5, the rat race, live, die, pay taxes kind of motto, that you're never going to get a leg up. But we actually can and do create this world on a daily basis from just those very thoughts. So we can also rewrite the entire script and add a new scripture or two to our fate, spelling it out in our true present and future to be fated to be heroes of the story because of our true origins of our past. We are who we've been waiting for. Understanding cause and effect. If you can learn and know the cause, that's knowledge, that's wisdom, that's research, that's awareness. then you can be the effect. And that is walking in faith of being a child of and a great creator yourself, a daily creator. It's your destiny to know who you are. And the more you practice and play around with this, with basic storms, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, earthquake rumbles, the bigger your confidence will build. So that as the ripple effect of this series of cyclical events play out, leading up to the big one, your faith will not waver, and you can stand firm in your faith like you have planted your feet in concrete. The way that God says in the Bible, in Revelations, that you should stand firm in your faith and not see the things happening before your eyes, but know in your spirit that you will overcome it. And also how it says in the Bible, Jesus's quote to his 12 disciples that he sends out in 12 directions, and he says to them, you too can go forth and do the same great works as me, and more, much more, because Jesus knew that this day was coming. Jesus knew that he had given it his best at trying to get them to listen and understand and believe, but it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen in his time. So more cataclysms came, more events happened, because more time was needed to learn. And that's why so many of us feel like something's coming. And there's so many of us on planet Earth right now who feel like we have some mission, even if we don't know what it is, because we volunteered to be here for these events. We were chosen by our Maker, and we volunteered graciously to appease and behold the truth and stand in our power. It's time for you to wake up and be the hero of this story. And yes, you can be a real life superhero. I do it all the time. And I'm not any more special than you, except that I know how to have faith in it. That's the only difference between you and I. It's the only difference. Now I want to show you something else. I want to share something else with you. Bear with me just a second. I want you to hear what this man has to say.
Right. All those objects are out there, and they have a lot of mass. And originally, the scientists said, "Look, a planet is such a crazy idea. Maybe it's the Kuiper Belt itself that's pulling it on itself and making these orbits look funny." And they ran simulations, and they tried to make that work, and it didn't work. It just didn't work. There's not enough stuff out there.
Really incredible. And when we talk about the mass of this planet X, this ninth planet, being 10 times that of Earth, for those who are not scientists, what does that really mean, the mass of a planet versus Earth's mass?
Well, if you could put it on a scale, how much it would weigh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. And so it's bigger, it's bulkier, it's got more heft, it's got more gravity. It's this huge elephant in the living room, except we didn't know it was there.
In the early 1960s, Chan Thomas wrote a book titled The Adam and Eve Story and attempted to have it published by the Emerson House in Los Angeles, California. However, before actually being published, the CIA censored his book for 50 years. Thomas later published a shorter version of his original book in 1993 through the Bengal Tiger Press. Coincidence theorists filed an FOIA lawsuit against the CIA, ordering them to release the book. In 2013, the CIA released a alleged shorter version of the original book. So what was it exactly that the CIA didn't want anybody to know that Chan wrote about in his book? The Adam and Eve story actually tells a grim.
So before we go on, I want to just say to you right there that what they didn't want you to know and was taken out of it was exactly what Hapgood, Charles Hapgood, surmised in crustal displacement and what would cause that when, like the woolly mammoths were found with buttercups and vegetation in their stomachs and in their mouth, even when they were suddenly flash frozen. And so, and then Einstein also came up with some of that, but it was mainly Charles Hapgood who finally discovered that there's a such thing as crustal displacement, where the surface Earth will actually slip as the pole shift is happening. Okay, just so you know, there's facts behind all of that. Now, and I also don't necessarily agree with this man's date that he has of April 13th, 2029, but I'll leave his link down below so that you can watch the full video and decide for yourself.
Grim tale of a pole shift of our planet bringing about major flooding, volcanic activity, earthquakes, and so on. So was the CIA just trying to prevent a widespread panic of sorts? While at the same time, the CIA is using our hard-earned taxpayer dollars to build underground bunkers and underground cities? Billionaires are doing the same exact thing. Do they know something that we don't know? Who gets to stay in their underground city that was built with our money? Do you have a ticket to get in? Because I certainly don't have a golden ticket. I would like to know if you happen to have one of those golden tickets. And if you happen to miss my video, Billionaire Bunkers, and you want to know where the safe zones are to live and know a little bit more about these underground cities, check out that video. I'll leave a link up above. Here is some of what is said in the book, The Adam and Eve Story.
With a rumble so low as to be inaudible, then fueling into a thundering roar, the earthquake starts. Only it's not like any earthquake in history. In California, mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. A mighty Pacific rears back and piles up into a mountain of seawater more than 2 miles high, then starts its race eastward. The wind attacks, shredding everything in supersonic bombardment. The mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind eastward, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco as if they were but grains of sand. Across the continent, the 1,000-mile-per-hour wind wreaks unholy vengeance everywhere, mercilessly. In many places, the Earth's molten sublayer breaks through and spreads a sea of white-hot liquid fire. In a fraction of a day, all vestiges of civilization are gone, and the great cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, Austin, are nothing but legends. Barely a stone is left where millions walked just a few hours ago. South America finds the Andes not high enough to stop the violence. In less than a day, the entire continent is burned by molten earth fire, buried under miles of violent seas, then turned into a frozen hell. Everything freezes. Man, beast, plant, and mud in less than 4 hours. Squirrels are shrunken, then heaved even higher when the wall of seawater strikes.
Western Africa and the sands of the Sahara vanish. The Fury marches on for 6 days. During the 6th day, the ocean starts to settle. The Bay of Bengal Basin just east of India is now at the North Pole. The Pacific Ocean just west of Peru is at the South Pole. New ice caps begin to form in the new polar areas. Greenland and Antarctica, now rotating equatorially, emerge with verdant tropical foliage. The Atlantic covered by unbelievable amounts of mud. Of San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, and Boston, not a trace is left. The cataclysm has done its work and drives the pitiful few who survive into a new Stone Age. We join Noah, Adam and Eve, Atlantis, Mu and Olympus, and Jesus joins Osiris, Tahora, Zeus, and Vishnu.
Next, we have the discovery of Herculebus in the gifted astronomer.
Now, just real quick, I also want to say that I too was shown horrendous visions of cataclysmic changes beyond our wildest imagination, much like the visuals that you were just looking at. Except in my visions, I was hearing the screams and the cries of all of the people, of all of the souls that were being lost in these cataclysms. And I often have premonitions. I always have my entire life. And I came to this point where I dropped to my knees and I said, okay, tell me why. Why would we have these premonitions? Why would we have these visions if there's nothing that we can do about them? Is it only to prepare us for the worst? And God very loudly spoke to me and said, no, I give you these visions so that you can effectively change the outcome. You just have to know that you can. And that's where my journey began, in scientifically testing that notion.
Astronomer who discovered it, Carlos Ferrata. Ferrata was a Chilean scientist, geologist, and astronomer born in 1909 and happened to die on September 11, 2001. I thought that was kind of interesting. He spent 59 years researching celestial bodies, especially Herculebus, and predicting with stunning precision geological activity such as the Chile earthquake in 1939. Carlos predicted the quake within 4 hours of the actual quake hitting. Mr. Ferrata first discovered this object by accident with his telescope. He continued researching Herculebus and the coming effects of the presence of this body as it begins to have vibrational interaction with our solar system and specifically with the planet Earth. Ferrata referred to Herculebus as a comet planet, mainly because it had a mass of a giant planet with a tail that followed behind. In 1999, at the age of 90, Carlos Ferrata actually broke his silence and did an interview. In this interview, he made many alarming statements about the passing of the celestial body Herculebus. This is what he had to say. Soon, events will take place that will allow Herculebus to be seen with the naked eye. This body will not go unnoticed and everyone will see it. An event in the skies that everybody will be able to see. Once again, we see a pattern here, because the Holy Bible and Jesus Christ tells us that there will be events in the sky that everybody will see, and the Hopi once again say the same exact thing.
Y ahora es gran confusión, más que confusión, y le van a dar un sinnúmero de interpretaciones a este asunto.
Ferrata goes on to say in his interview that there will be a lot of confusion, more than just confusion, and they will give many interpretations about it. Astronomers will say that they will be seeing Mars or some other planet, but in reality, they're seeing Herculebus.
Now, I also just want to remind you that we've been told not once, but twice now since 2009, or maybe it was 2007. I don't remember exactly. Sometime around that time, 2007 to 2009, maybe even as far as 2011. Anyway, twice now we've been told that we will see Betelgeuse go supernova, and that this will cause us to be able to see something as bright as the sun in the night sky. Now, anyone with any kind of logic would question that. I would think. I certainly question it. A little bit more I want you to see here.
Nibiru, the red star Kachina.
¿Qué consecuencias sobre nuestro planeta?
Las más terroríficas. Luego, cada cual arrégleselas como pueda. He calculado 3 puntos triangulados de alta sismicidad que se aproximan. El norte de la costa del Mediterráneo. Francia y España. La costa sur del Pacífico, de Valparaíso a Arequipa. Y Java, Sumatra y Borneo. 3 puntos. Estos puntos van a ser terremotos de carácter volcánico.
Also, like Casey, Ferrata claims that the last arrival of Herculebus 13,000 years ago was what wiped out the ancient continent of Atlantis, Mu, and Lemuria.
El gran campo gravitatorio.
Now, I want to stop right there for a moment to say to you that I actually did a lot of studying on ice core samples, tree ring samples, so on and so forth, like that. Ocean floor changes, the current ocean floor changes, the temperature changes, all sorts of things that I studied to see just exactly how often this comes around. Now, it actually comes around every 11 to 13,000 years, roughly, give or take, is when it puts the really big whammy on us. But it's really more of like every 3,600 year increments, but it's just that every fourth one is the worst, because you can track this back. 3,600 years ago was, this event, and 3,600 years ago was that big event, and another big event, all the way back to the disappearance of Atlantis being 11 to 13,000 years ago. Noah's flood is in there. 3,600 years ago was Noah's flood. 3,600 years before that, there was another great flood. Now, I know everyone's thinking in their Bible memory, their Bible verse memories, that we're being promised that it won't ever be destroyed by flood again, but it's actually going to be all of the elements participating in this particular event, because this is our fourth cycle of it passing through the area that will be the most impactful. And also, as the Hopi say, and other Native Americans and other indigenous peoples from around the world, present day and in our past, that we're in what they call a fourth world or a fourth race, and we're moving into the fifth world or the fifth race in some time in our future. And that's exactly what we're in right now. That's why this is the Great Awakening, because we have to wake up spiritually first before this event takes place. And this is basically like a great big old test. Great big old test. How far have you come? How much are you willing to learn? And how much are you really willing to let go of that was in your programming or dogma or, belief systems, or however you want to word that? How much of that are you willing to shed to open your mind and learn further and grow and develop and evolve as a species and as a soul? Okay? A little bit more here.
Habitacional que trae ese astro nuevo, que hace 13.000 años que no penetraba y que 13.000 años atrás fue en los tiempos de la Atlántida perdida, tiene resonancia y efectos que a los reflejos, que a la debilidad. Queda el gran cambio.
Like Edgar Casey and even myself, Carlos Ferrada claims that this would bring about a shifting of the poles.
Ese gran cambio, el cual usted viene estudiando desde 1940, ¿verdad? Que viene estudiando ese astro. Van 59 años de documentación. Ese gran cambio es humano, además es a la Tierra, porque indica un cambio de polos.
Es geofísico y humano.
Geofísico y humano. Y se habla de que va a haber un cambio de los polos magnéticos de la Tierra.
Son tantas las cosas que lamentable la humanidad no está preparada. El cambio viene. La destrucción viene. Y, más que nada, afectará a la humanidad en su existencia, en su producción, en su subsistencia misma.
To make matters even creepier, and to help us align this perfectly once again with the Hopi's red star Kachina, Ferrada describes Herculebus as a red comet planet, which presents an elliptical orbit of a comet with a great mass like a planet. Basically, a planet with a tail. This alone connects Ferrada's red comet planet directly to the Hopi's red star Kachina prophecy.
Okay. So it's not a planet. It's not a planet. It's a star. It has planets with it. It has asteroids with it. It has meteors. It has moons. It has satellites. It's got debris. It has comets. Okay. It has its own system, mini system. That's what the red tail is about. That's what the blue star Kajina is about, because you're going to see it first. And it is the forward part of the field of the system that's incoming. Gravitational pulls affect those things. They come into our system. That's why you're seeing more meteors in the sky. That's why there's more comets. That's why things like Oumuamua, I would propose, are coming into our field now, because they are in that orbit of that mini system. And our main star has a much stronger gravitational pull than this binary star does, you know? So it's going to suck some of those things out and into our vicinity that we're going to witness ahead of time and after the fact. But it doesn't have to be utter destruction. In my opinion, and my knowing, it does not have to be. We have two choices. We can choose to accept our fate, and that fate will be sealed. Or we can accept our destiny, and then that fate will be sealed. And we can affect so much if we stand in our true, God-given, natural law power, in my opinion.
We even have here what people believe to be a crop circle that is actually a warning of an outside influence coming into our solar system. I want to know what you think, so please let me know in the comments below, and thank you for giving me some love by clicking that like button. Now we come to the most important question of all. Which comet exactly is it that the Hopi people were talking about in the Blue Star Kachina prophecy? We have so many comets coming in and out of our solar system.
Okay. And that's where he actually gets into his supposition that it's the comet Apophis that's due to come back around in April of 2029. And if that one doesn't get us, that it's also due back in 7 years' time in 2036. This is old news. Apophis. We've already known about Apophis. We've seen it come by before. It's made several passes every 7 years for the past 14, 21 years, something like that. So, I mean, we've known about it for a while. I think about 21 years I've known about it. And it's not the direct concern that we should be focused on, though it is part of that system that I refer to, that, in my opinion, belongs to our alleged binary solar system. Also, if you were to do any type of space science research, you would learn that the majority of the other systems that we see, even within our own galaxy, are of a binary or trinary or even four star systems. Sirius, take Sirius for example. We knew of Sirius A to begin with. Then we learned later that there was a Sirius B. And then, before we believed the doggone tribe who told us that there was a Sirius C, we actually had astronomers that discovered it to prove the doggone correct, who don't have telescopes, who don't have anything except there's still continued present day oral narrations of our creation story and of all of Earth's destructive stories. So, who do we believe? The people that we would rather attach some type of conspiracy label to, or a non-trust label to, of our modern world? Or should we listen to the ancient peoples and the indigenous cultures that are still alive on planet Earth today, who carry that knowledge and carry that wisdom and are considered the wisdom keepers of such knowledge? The choice is always yours. But it is my job to be that beacon to lead you home to self. And it's not just so that we can all sing kumbaya. It's so that you and I can all be the superheroes of this story. To be continued. Be well and be blessed in your own love and light. Until then.